Hey guys, this article I would like to give a little comparison between the accessibility options of mobile phones between Android and iOS. I think the big picture of both operating systems are quite good. That means you can do a lot of things with iOS voiceover, that's clear. But Android Talkback in the year 2024, what we have now, have reached a good level in many aspects. And the big things you can do with also comparable to iOS voiceover. But there are some differences, especially in the um, smaller things, which can make a difference for some people. One problem of Android is that you cannot start TalkBack from the start if you don't live in an English-speaking country. When you start TalkBack without Wi-Fi or an internet access, it will not talk because it needs Wi-Fi to or internet access to download the speech package. That's a big thing, I think, a big problem. And there are many people who don't speak English as their first language. And if you don't know that, of course, you will try to start with your own language, which will not work. And this is a big failure of Google, I think. Another thing is that you can never say the problem is based on the the Android version, for example, because many providers like Huawei or Xiaomi and the others can make adjustments to the operating system or to TalkBack. Like Samsung makes some changes to TalkBack on Samsung devices, and you can never say, okay, the problem is in the Android device or TalkBack or in the app. TalkBack feels a little bit like an external screen reader because it's not very stable in the uh, many aspects. And I think Google didn't really work on the potential of Android or didn't use the potential of Android in TalkBack because it is an open source project. You can do a lot more than with VoiceOver. We know that Apple is keeping VoiceOver very closed. You cannot do anything as user, but TalkBack, for example, you can make an API for scripting, so that interested persons can make enhancements to Android. That would be very cool, and then TalkBack would be better than VoiceOver. It is very um, yeah, it's just very nice that Google didn't use the potential of Android. What is clear is that VoiceOver has more options. For example, it has much more voices. Some things in the Braille properties that you can change, and many more options. It is um, there are more options to customize VoiceOver that makes it very attractive. For example, one big problem I have is that you cannot there are voice changes. For example, if the language of the app is wrongly implemented. For example, if you have a German app and the voice is set to English, you cannot change that with the voices. It's very difficult, and then you cannot use the application because you don't understand what the screen reader is saying. And that's a very big problem of Android. In the voiceover, you can configure that. You can say it doesn't matter in which language the app is. You want to listen in German, and this doesn't work in Android. It's very sad. Of course, voiceover is not the god of screen readers, as many blind people seems to think. When I screen scan the discussions, I see a lot of issues in voiceover, which voiceover has around 5 or more years. And what you can see is that Apple seems not to care about software quality of voiceover. That means you have they are improving something, and some other things are decreasing, for example. If you consider to buy an Android device, I would suggest to use a device to buy a device which runs the latest Android, and the Android should be very pure. Android One is not more developed, I think, but the Google devices with Talkback, the Google devices, the Pixel devices seems to be a good idea if you can afford it. If you cannot afford it, you should look out for Androids which are very pure. Perhaps not Samsung or Huawei, perhaps other devices which are not so have not so much rubbish on it, or not so much adjustments. Perhaps at last I would like to talk about some advantages of TalkBack. One, or Android itself. One big uh, advantage of Android is that you can connect it to your notebook, Windows notebook, for example, and can transfer data or use it as data storage, use it as a device for internet connection and things like that. And that's very cool, I think. That's a very cool thing. And one big advantage is, I think, that the mainstream apps like WhatsApp, Google Maps, K9 Mail, and things like that, they are rather okay. You can use them. What I find difficult is surfing in the web. Um, Different browsers have different issues. For example, the third-party browsers, that means Chrome is okay, but Firefox, for example, my preferred browser, has some issues, which makes it difficult. Um, the cool thing about Firefox is that you can install some add-ons like advertising blocker and something like that. It's very cool. Um, at last, I would like to give an recommendation. When you have a little bit of sight, which means enough sight to look on the screen and see something on the screen, Android is a good choice. As I already said, you have to should use the cheapest device because they have some issues with reaction time and things like that. Um, if you are completely blind, I would prefer iOS, I must say. Also, I don't like the Apple policy and I don't like the new iPhones, but that's a personal thing. As a fully blind person, I would prefer to use iOS, I must say. because it's cleaner implemented, it works better. Of course, it has some issues, but it works and it does do most time, and it does do what you want it to do. As it's the main thing, the main important thing, I think. So I hope you find the episode enjoyable, and would be glad if you subscribe to the channel. Goodbye.